Nvidia shares pulling back today. The AI market darling falling further from that record high that it reached not too long ago. Our next guest, though, isn't worried about the bumpy path that we have seen for Nvidia over the last several weeks. He's got a buy rating on the stock, the highest price target on the street. We want to bring in Hans Mosesmann. He is Rosenblatt Securities, a senior research analyst. It's great to have you here. So when you take a look at what has been certainly a volatile couple of weeks for Nvidia, some of that sell side pressure on the stock, why isn't that worrisome to you?
Well, we're entering new territory for Nvidia. The valuation really out of thin air almost over the past year. The move has been such that it has people kind of worried, like, how's that even possible? And it requires you to have an understanding of what's going on with AI and their leadership position. So it could be a little bumpy, but from a secular perspective, for the next 10 years, this is going to be the way to play AI. They're at another level. And I think people have to just get used to that. And they're not a semiconductor company anymore. They're a platform. They're all things AI.
And Hans, I'm assuming if you're bullish on Nvidia too, Hans, you must be also then bullish on just the bigger mega trend of AI that you must think, yes, it is this paradigm shift. And yes, Jensen Huang is right when he talks about, how the next industrial revolution has begun, Hans.
Yeah, that's right. So there are a couple of moving parts. And so the cloud, which is where most of Nvidia's business is not going to be the home of all things AI. As time goes on, more AI gets done, not up there in the cloud, but in the mid-edge, the far edge, and it opens up the door for more efficient solutions in terms of platform, hardware, and even software. So there are other players that will benefit from that transition, such as AMD, such as ARM, a little company called Lattice that we cover. So there's other participants, but in terms of the value capture of AI, Nvidia may lose unit market share, but they may actually gain value because they're monetizing the entire stack. That's the entire rack, the entire software that goes around that. So it's a formidable model that I think people have yet to kind of fully grasp.
In a recent series of notable trades, former Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, filed a new trading form that shows that she purchased 10,000 shares of Nvidia stock once again last month, in one of her biggest purchases ever. The transaction is worth between $1 million and $5 million, and if you've been following her trades and how they turned out, you'd know that this is extremely bullish for Nvidia and definitely good news for the investors. So, in today's video, we're going to discuss the reason behind this move and what's next for Nvidia stock investors. But first, if you want to keep up with Nvidia's latest updates and keep up with the stock market's latest news, you can follow our Twitter account. We post multiple times daily about the biggest changes and catalysts in the market, so click the follow button if you don't want to miss the newest market updates. Now, back to today's video.
Hans, what you just said a minute ago there, that Nvidia is no longer just a chip maker, it's all things AI. That has actually captured the attention of regulators around the world. And earlier this week, we got the Reuters report out that actually France is looking Nvidia is setting potentially facing some antitrust charges there in France. I'm curious to you just how you're assessing that risk from an analyst perspective and to what extent this could ultimately be a worrisome headwind here for the stock.
Yeah, I think that NVIDIA competitors and NVIDIA observers and countries get worried about a company that is grasping or capturing all of this value. So there is a knee-jerk reaction in some cases to stop that. They've already endured the U.S. basically with these restrictions on China. 25% of the business is basically gone, and they're still basically sold out. So it's something to watch. But they are not being predatory in the least, even though prices have been moving up. It's not the price of the chip or the board or the rack that is driving this business. It's the value created by the total cost of ownership. It's a different metric that we in the semiconductor industry are not used to, right? You can double the price of this product and it provides significant TCO, performance per watt, per cubic foot, per dollar advantages that nobody can meet, right? It's not like there's another guy that can do it. Maybe AMD captures some share here, but it's a little different. But yes, it's something to monitor. In France is something that kind of raises eyebrows and so on. But at the moment, I don't think it's going to lead to anything because they're being fair in terms of how they price their products, in my opinion.
This news is not a surprise to anyone who's familiar with Nancy Pelosi's background in investing, as she and her investor husband have both invested many times in Nvidia over the years. In fact, she's well known for profiting from the tech giant. As of May alone, the couple earned a shocking $4 million from Nvidia call options. Yet, it has not all been blooming for Pelosi, as she has been heavily accused of exploiting her high-profile position by profiting off insider information, as the Congresswoman traded Nvidia shares on the House floor during the CHIPS and Science Act discussion. However, Pelosi has never been formally condemned for her or her husband's investments, and she remains one of the most profitable public elected officials on record when it comes to stock trading. And despite no longer being the House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi's investments never failed to grab the attention of investors and political analysts, sparking questions about the relationship between politics and business. In addition to that, Pelosi's investments are always a very interesting subject due to their long history of success. But what's Pelosi betting on? And should investors follow suit and buy Nvidia shares? Let's find out. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Investocracy.
Hans, as you know, Jensen is building out this platform. As he expands, Hans, he moves into new areas, new verticals. Are there companies that you think should be worried?
Well, so the traditional way of doing things in silicon are changing. So that the let's call it the general purpose server market is being really destroyed in terms of value by moving to an accelerated cycle. So, guys like Intel and even AMD, if AMD didn't have a GPU, for example, they'd be in big trouble. So they are changing the way compute is done. And so the next wave of value capture for NVIDIA, if you look at, say, the cloud, for example, are networking areas, storage areas. And so you start to kind of bring in those areas in terms of value, and you maximize the interface between networking and storage with the computer, the accelerated compute. So I think that the traditional networking players and storage players probably have to deal with this. There are ways to get around that. For example, Broadcom and Marvell, which are big players in networking, they have the ability to do custom chips. And so some of the hyperscalers don't want to use NVIDIA all the time. They want to do their own custom, highly efficient, very expensive accelerators. And so there's another kind of theme that is counter to that. But it is interesting how, if you look at NVIDIA's roadmap, how they expect to capture not just the GPU, the compute, but the entire rack and everything that goes inside a rack and a data center.
While Nvidia stock is experiencing some pullbacks right now, the company's fundamentals remain intact, which means that we could end up seeing a recovery in the stock very soon. If the chipmaker performs half as well in the second half of this year as it did in the first, the Congresswoman's new 10,000 Nvidia shares will make her around $1 million in return, 5 times her annual salary. This move indicates her solid confidence in AI and the company, especially given Nvidia's unreal rise since the artificial intelligence boom in the late 2022. Furthermore, Pelosi is not the only investor who's bullish on Nvidia, as according to many analysts, the upcoming release of the Blackwell GPU, constant increase in demand for the H100 and H200 GPUs, and the firm enlarging the supply to meet the huge demand altogether can boost the stock price to $200 over the course of the next 12 months. The former Speaker of the House bought 50 call options, each worth between $1 and $5 million. These options allow her to buy Nvidia shares at $120 each, even though the shares were trading at about $487. Due to a stock split, she now has the right to buy shares at $12 each, while the current price of Nvidia is around $120. This means her investment has increased by nearly 1,000%. This move by the renowned investor is just another indication of the current new investing directive that is heading strongly towards artificial intelligence. So, what does this really mean for Nvidia's stock? Let's find out. But first, if you made it this far into the video, thank you. These videos take a lot of effort and time to make, so if you enjoyed them, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. This goes a long way in helping us grow. That said, back to the video.
The NASDAQ 100 S&P at new all-time highs. How do you see today shaping up? What's your WEX word of the day?
Well, my works word of the day is higher, as in, we still believe there's still room for the market to move higher. I feel like we're in that scene from the first Jurassic Park movie where the guy says life finds a way, right? So the market is finding a way, and we're seeing that hitting 32 record highs just yesterday. So this excitement around AI is still kind of fueling this upward momentum.
Tiffany, we had a guest on earlier. So kind of a mixed message here. They're forecasting the S&P goes to 7,000 by next year, but at the same time, they're saying it's a bubble that will eventually pop. When we're looking at the AI trade, are you still putting money to work in that trade? Do you think it's a bubble?
So I don't think it's a bubble. And so this is actually one of the questions that we're getting kind of like repeatedly from clients and also in our prospect meetings. And so when we think about a tech bubble and all this excitement around AI, we're naturally kind of comparing it to the tech bubble of the 2000s. And so there are really main differences here, right? So when you look at these companies, these magnificent 7 companies, these are profitable companies compared to the tech companies in the 2000s that had not seen any profit yet. Right? And so there was lots of euphoria around this idea called the internet, but these companies had not even been profitable yet, right? And so when you also look at the Magnificent 7 companies, they're 33% of course, the S&P, but the earnings growth, the growth has been like 50% year over year through the first quarter. They account for 39% of the R&D spending, 23% of free cash flow, and 16% of cash ex. So these companies are investing in themselves, they're profitable, and they're growing.
Pelosi's recent investment is likely to have a very positive impact on the stock because it can boost the confidence in the company and attract more investment to it. And yet, it fuels the already existent debate surrounding trading by members of the Congress, as Pelosi's trades have often coincided with significant legislative changes that affect the companies involved. But generally, this trade is definitely beneficial for the semiconductor business as a whole, and would be considered a sign of optimism in the future of AI, which can even result in benefiting other related stocks. Additionally, this trade can play a role in changing the impression of some investors who believe that Nvidia's boom is over, and that is definitely what the stock really needs at the moment. And it's not like there's no other reasons to be bullish on Nvidia. For one, the company operates in industries that are growing massively and rapidly, like data centers. Notably, at the time of this video, data centers represent almost 86% of Nvidia's revenue, yet it still has a gigantic room of potential to fulfill. In fact, estimates say that the global data center market could reach $418 billion by 2030, growing at a compound annual growth rate of 9.6% from 2023 to 2030. Moreover, an estimated worth of $1 trillion of infrastructure is moving from using CPUs to GPUs, which can ultimately push Nvidia stock to new heights. And many analysts also agree on that statement, like Wedbush's Dan Ives, who has just stated that the AI party is just getting started and Nvidia is not slowing down anytime soon. In conclusion, Nvidia's stock is definitely a very good buy. Otherwise, a very experienced investor like Nancy Pelosi would have never put such a large amount of money in it. But what do you think about Nvidia stock? Is it a buy at the current price? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section. And don't forget to tell us what your valuation for Nvidia is. If you would like to know what companies like Nvidia have been up to these past few days, go ahead and click on the next video on your screen. See you there.